In a military headquarters near the Thai border, leaders from around Burma meet to sign an historic agreement. The country has been languishing in a 45-year-long civil war, which has cost hundreds of thousands of lives and made Burma one of the world's poorest nations. These leaders represent an unlikely alliance of democratically elected politicians, dissidents, and the ethnic guerrilla forces who have been fighting in the Burmese jungle for 2 generations. Together, they command the popular support of virtually the entire nation. They also represent the last hope to bring peace and democracy to the people of Burma. That military dictatorship has a record of human rights violations almost without equal. In signing the agreement, these leaders were formalizing their commitment to a unified and egalitarian system of government.
Currently, because of the chauvinistic behavior of the fascist military dictatorship of the Burma Socialist Program Party, BSPP, and the State Law and Order Restoration Council, SLOC, the indigenous nationalities are deprived of their ethnic rights. Democracy and basic human rights of the people are also abused. National unity has been destroyed, and civil war is going on unabated. Thus, indigenous nationalities and all the peoples must topple the military dictatorship and set up a true federal union where equality, right of self-determination, democracy, and basic human rights are guaranteed.
The reaction of the government in Rangoon to this democratic alliance would plunge the country into the worst social and military crisis in living memory. This film is about the most recent chapter in the history of that struggle, from the position of the people who are fighting it and who have suffered through it.
The questions of all these ethnic nationalities is a political question. That is why we tried to establish a united front comprised of all the oppressed ethnic nationalities. And in 1988, you will remember that there's a popular uprising, and the SLOC, instead of solving these by political means, shot and killed innocent people, villages, school children in the middle of the city in daylight time.
It began in March 1988. In the first large demonstration since the military seized power in 1962, a few thousand students held a rally in the streets of Rangoon. They were protesting the shooting of a young female student by a policeman the day before. Government response to the protest was blunt and brutal. By the end of the day, there were more than 100 dead. Public reaction to the massacre was swift. Still without any clear leadership or direction, the demonstrations were a massive public reaction to 26 years of repressive government and economic stagnation. The so-called Burmese way to socialism. The 8th of August rallies marked the real beginning of people power in Burma. Hundreds of thousands marched in all the major cities to demand the resignation of the government.
The government controls nothing. The government doesn't even control a neighborhood. The neighborhood controls itself. The government is just reduced to controlling whatever the troops happen to be standing on at the moment.
Led by the students, monks, and some moderate politicians, the democracy movement in the cities was certainly factionalized, but order was maintained.
to be the best for our country and for the people, that U Win and his lackeys and henchmen leave the country for good.
Other figures began to emerge as public heroes. U Nu, a former prime minister, made a failed attempt to form a rival government.
Ex-Prime Minister, and future Prime Minister U Nu.
Aung San Suu Kyi, then only a political moderate, was also beginning to attract large crowds. But it was the increasing involvement of the armed forces in the demonstrations which finally brought about the coup of September 1988. The new regime was in fact little more than the old, reborn with a change of name and a mandate to regain control. It was called the State Law and Order Restoration Council, or SLORC. In one of its first acts, U Nu and Aung San Suu Kyi were placed under house arrest. When it finally came, the military reprisal was carefully planned and brutally effective. By October, the rallies had stopped, and there were 10,000 people dead. By 1990, there were major food shortages. As the international aid trucks rolled in, the government arrested leaders of the democracy movement. While thousands ended up in prison, some managed to escape and make their way to the so-called liberated areas. For the ethnic nationalities here, food shortages have long been a fact of life. Children at a war orphan school near the Karen headquarters quickly learn the value of rationing. Many have come from areas near the front line where thousands of villages face starvation. The ethnic peoples of Burma make up almost 60% of the total population. Their states, isolated and often inaccessible places, take up most of the landmass. Here, the Kachin, the Karen, the Shan, the Mon and others have been fighting their own war against the military regime for 45 years.
Ledo pagotai pago hogo ledo kosa kuda kutogo do you opinion ne mi ba kwa le peyo masala atapita mani awade mane o pwa ka jopo do ma do you mi ba kwa le ula awade kla na ye tinya le awade mane ora do awade ne le atate de mara ne tapot thwe law ta ji ba no awade ma ra ne ma wade myo ma ta ne di do ma se to ko ne ma wade myo Ini makwa di ta awal di hello tu keluar blog ni poto pun pa bado wada tu so pa poto pun do oleh pi ni awal ni wan ni to pala ni hi de tu so pu ha si hu da ha hu oji wi de di to ta du lo di to kle ta mi du mi kela da ni awal di wan ni to pu do sini da wa to pu pa ba pli ba te wa de bu wa mi ko blog ni tholo wa de pho ko jin ni ha si ta kho lo ko si awal de te ora le ta du mi kela da lo ni ta wa de ta thi pa blog lo de ora cha ni Udara di do siwa ta potali da oda gwela ta krut li ashi ni siwa siwa so de ni hati pui ra le khoplo de hati lo ji.
With the urban centres back in its control, the government went ahead with its promised 1990 elections. Restrictions on candidates' movements made campaigning almost impossible. Confident they could not possibly lose, the government invited international media to witness its free and open elections. And with little understanding of Burmese politics, that is precisely how they were reported.
The SLORC made promises that he will hand over power to the people representative who won in the election. but the NLD won a landslide victory, but the FLOC never hand over power. And he started arresting and putting behind bars the people's representative.
The democracy movement had begun in an atmosphere of great hope. But the betrayal of the elections spelled the end for the urban movement. Its followers were to leave the rallies behind and continue the struggle beside the ethnic nationals.
Burma is now one of the least developed countries in the world. This means people inside the cities, they are being suffering a lot. And worse are the people that are still in the remote part of the country, especially the Karen people. Most of them, they were born, they grew up, they died, had never seen a doctor. Most of them were born, grew up, died, never seen a school. So life for them, I would say, is still very primitive.
In the ethnic states, more than half of Burma's total population lives in extreme poverty. As war continues, the gap between these people and the growing world society is becoming impossible to close. There are only a handful of doctors to service the needs of millions of ethnic Burmese. With few resources and no government help, the ethnic states set up their own mobile clinics. And with some international aid, paramedics were trained to fight the diseases of poverty.
Most of the sufferers are women and children. No family planning, no prenatal care, and 90% of the women delivered are trained traditional birth attendants. And also there are many children die within 5 years of age. Nearly 50% or sometimes 30%, 40% die with treatable or preventable diseases. There are many cases of dysentery outbreak along the border, and there are many children die because they are already malnourished, and then dysentery outbreak out. And usually this comes from water diseases. So we have to give about education about the water.
But in many places, there is no help. In this tuberculosis isolation center, there is no medicine, and patients can only wait their turn to die.
There should be an end of civil war, there should be peace, there should be a federal state. So this is exactly what the current one. We should have a federal union where there will be equality, liberty, and social progress.
Since 1976, the ethnic groups of Burma had realized their only chance of overthrowing the military regime was to achieve genuine national unity outside it. Despite the disaster of the 1990 elections, the ethnic nationals and the urban democracy forces were moving towards national unification.
Hãy subscribe
When Aung San Suu Kyi's cousin, Dr. Sen Win, met with the ethnic leaders at Karen headquarters in 1991, they created the first alliance between democratically elected politicians and the guerrilla forces. It commanded great popular support. Within months, it was acknowledged around the world as Burma's legitimate government in exile.
All the leaders attending the seminar agreed to form the broader fronts known as the Democratic Alliance of Burma, including the Burman organization, the students, the monks, and the religious organization or the Muslim organization as well. Altogether, there are 22 political organizations at the beginning, but after a few months, two collapsed and 2020 left. When we formed the Democratic Alliance of Burma, the main political objective is the restoration of democracy and the establishment of a genuine federal union for the future of Burma and for all the ethnic nationalities to be able to enjoy equal rights. And on these agreements, we work unitedly, politically and militarily.
After 42 years, I would say this is the best time for us to go back to our promised land. Our people have left our promised land, and it's time now for us to go back there. The political situations as well as the world situations are indicating that soon we'll be able to go back to our native land.